Okay, so yesterday powder coated the calipers. I think they turned out great. I think just need a little bit of cleaning up. This one didn't turn out as good as the other. If you can see, there's some dark spots. I'm going to go ahead and recoat this one, but essentially our blast booth at work got a little bit clogged up, and I was having a hard time stripping the remainder of the powder coat off this one. Was kind of in a rush, so I went ahead and shot it, and you can tell the difference in finish between the one that was better prepped and the one that wasn't. Still pretty happy, pretty satisfied with my first time powder coating. Here's a couple of the other pieces. Some of these turned out really good. Like this particular rear caliper is super shiny, super evenly coated. I love the color. It's definitely going to be a good match with the car. And now it's the time to put it all back together. First, I need to clean out any potential areas where blasting sand or powder coat could have gotten. So I'm going to clean out some of the nooks and crannies. See here some of the brackets. These are the LSJ calipers, just to show a comparison to the Brembo. You know, these were the LSJ's front brake calipers, and you compare that to the massive size of the L&F Brembos. Just a lot more aggressive pad area and a lot larger clamping surface. So I can't wait to get these on the car. I've been in the process of, like I said, going in and cleaning up some of the areas. Like I had used a foam earplug to plug that hole, and it kind of got melted. So I just need to go in and pick out some of the melted foam and then make sure there's nothing trapped behind these pistons. On the fronts, I went ahead and pulled these pistons out of the brake caliper itself. You can see I just have a paper towel stuffed in there. So I'll clean up the cylinders. I'll put this back together. I'm actually thinking about just go ahead and selling this set of powder coated red calipers along with my old race pads that I had in there that had, I don't know, maybe 100 miles at most on them. But yeah, I can't wait to get the car back together. One thing on the rear, I noticed I had some uneven pad wear. So I went ahead and ordered some pretty aggressive rear race pads. Going to go ahead and clean up that rotor a little bit before I put it back together and go from there. I went ahead and ordered a set of axles. ZZP had Black Friday or Cyber Monday rather on their Stage 1 axles, which I know are just the Napa or CarQuest brand. But I got another set of axles. They should be here tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and pop those in, and can't wait to get these brakes fitted up. Well, isn't that something? So my wheels do not clear the Brembo calipers. Womp womp. Going to need to do a spacer. I'm not a huge fan of wheel spacers. New extended lug studs and probably a 1/4 inch spacer, and see what I can fit with the tires already kind of rubbed. But part of that is the soft suspension. So I guess let me do some measurements and go from there. All right, so gonna pull out this axle that we found leaking grease. I did have a bit of axle shake that I'm trying to sort out as well. I'm also gonna go ahead and final torque the hub bearing to specification. I just need to look that up. So here is the axle. You can see it's got grease seeping from the boot. Actually doesn't look that bad. I'm probably gonna have these rebuilt and keep them around as a spare. Went ahead and disconnected the bolts at the spindle to where it meets the strut, and that gave me enough room once I pulled that tie rod out of the way to pull the axle out. So I'm gonna yank the axle, put a little Rubbermaid container underneath it to catch any spill of transmission fluid. But I should just be able to come in here and pop this out. There we go. And she's out and draining right where I wanted it to drain, which is good. I'll let that kind of drain for a second. We've got the ZZP Stage 1 next to my several-year-old OTT Stage 1 axle. And they're identical, like I expected. This one's rusty from being in the garage around some chemicals and so forth. Wasn't sure where that axle shake was coming from either. I've got a joint that's going bad. When I'm hitting boost about 80 miles an hour, I get a real violent shake. It doesn't feel like it's in the tires. It doesn't feel like it's in the brakes. But I'm just going to go ahead and check everything while I'm under here. Pop a new axle in it. I'll have these redone, keep them around as a spare. Critical spares are always a good thing to have, especially on a high horsepower car. But let's pop it in. So if you look on the end here, you'll see the circlip. You just want to make sure that that split end here is in kind of the upright position. But I should just be able to tap this in. And you just want to guide it in here, making sure you don't get the boot hung on anything that's going to tear it. And I'm just going to whittle it to make sure that the splines fit in, which they do. And then I'm just going to hold this as straight as possible and give a few decent taps until it seats. And then get under here and inspect, make sure I'm fully bottomed out. And it looks like I totally am. Everything feels nice and snug. Piece of cake. All right, I looked up the torque specs on these. They are actually 85 foot-pounds according to the service manual, which is much higher than I expected. So I'm just going to torque these down a little bit. Now it's just a matter of guiding this axle shaft in, making sure it slides into place, and then lining up the strut. I'm going to have to pick up the strut slightly in order to get the bolts to line up. All right, so I actually slotted these to get some camber adjustment. You can see a little bit of camber movement. So what I'm going to do is hold this all the way out when I tighten these nuts down. And I'm just going to kind of zip them in place, and then I'm going to come back and torque them. All right. So now just torque. Strut assembly to steering knuckle is 89 foot-pounds. Okay. And then this guy down here is 44 pounds. But I think I'm going to have to run this one on with the gun real quick. There we go. Last connection is this ball joint to knuckle down here, and this one actually has a torque procedure, and that is 37 foot-pounds and then another 30 degrees. It actually seems a little light for how critical of a connection that is, but let's see what that feels like. And 30 degrees. There we go. All right. Brakes are looking sweet. I'm going to get a spacer for this front one. I went ahead and cleaned up the top hats on this rotor, gave it a light coat of some black paint last night. I'm actually going to do the same to this one over here. I've already started kind of buffing it off, but what I want is a nice true surface to mount the wheels to. Also going to probably get the wheels rebalanced while I got it apart. This line was for my LSJ brakes. It's stainless steel line. I ended up bending this bracket down just slightly in order to give myself a little more clearance. Realistically, it was just to allow this to make full turns without any kind of tension on it. And so just bending it down a couple degrees gave me enough of what I was after. So when I put brake fluid in it, hopefully it doesn't leak, but we got everything nice and tight and torqued. Also probably going to check the torque on all the other connections before we put it back on the ground. Front all set up, as well as a 3mm spacer was enough to clear the wheels, which means I'm not going to need extended lug studs. Just plenty of threads for proper torque, so happy there. They fit. We're going to test them out. I'll retorque them after I get some mileage on them as well. Went ahead and switched to Motul 600 brake fluid. I was already running DOT 4 in the car, but wanted to go with a little bit higher quality fluid than your basic Prestone brake fluid. Went ahead and opened all the bleeders to get the brake fluid to gravity drain, gravity bleed. And so once I started getting fluid out of every one of the bleeder valves, I knew I had fluid at the calipers. This evening after school, when Caden gets home, I'm going to have him lend me his foot to pump up the brakes and bleed them all the way around. I'm also going to bleed the clutch just to get the fresh Motul 600 fluid over to the clutch slave cylinder. Overall, pretty pleased. Brakes look great. Can't wait to test them out. This is going to go nicely with some other suspension upgrades I'm planning to do here soon. All right, pump it up. Hold it down. Pump it up.